Great. Thanks, everyone. Really excited to talk to you about our next Tech Tuesday at 2 webinar topic, which is Microsoft Azure Stack. Really excited to talk to you about this today, as well as to level set on a lot of different things that CORETTE is doing. So let's jump right in. My name is Brian Barnes. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at CORETTE Services. Been at CORETTE going on 10 years now. We do a lot of these sessions to help educate our customer bases on new product offerings, but also really lining up in terms of industry analysis and things that you want to pay attention to. So I did a lot of guest speaking, both across Microsoft, Citrix, and different healthcare and industry summits. And from our perspective, just really excited to continue to talk to you guys about Azure Stack. So what is Azure Stack? Azure Stack is really a portfolio of services that are tied towards both a hub offering for both disconnected and connected application modernization and workload capabilities on-premise, as well as an Azure Stack HCI offering that provides ability to bring virtualization workflows and workloads into your on-premise environment and tie into Azure-based services, and Azure Stack Edge, which is a cloud-managed appliance that does different types of workloads like machine learning, edge compute, and IoT solutions. So today I'm going to break down the different aspects of these three technologies and give you an understanding from a basis jump point of how you can leverage them inside of your own solution stacks. The Azure platform family is really made up of both Azure public and Azure private-based solutions. On the public side, looking at the left, you're relying on Azure for both your cloud compute, storage, and networking environment, and then the specific services you would leverage for app modernization, Kubernetes, Docker containers workflows, and now bringing that capability to your on-premise environment through an offering called Azure Stack Hub. As we move to the right to the environment, you move from a managed solution to a more unmanaged solution with Azure Stack HCI solutions, and the different use cases on how you would tie into Microsoft Azure, leveraging storage spaces direct in Windows Server 2019. Tying into those services like Azure Backup, Site Recovery, and Azure Monitor to create a virtualization capability on-premise while leveraging the power of Microsoft Azure in the cloud. Taking a look at how those solutions are really broken down, you're more restricted in the Azure Hub side and how you enter this solution type. They're very integrated, fully managed, and automated, tying into the Azure update cycle. You can typically start on either 4, 8, nodes and grow up to 16 nodes. You can also have a pay upfront or pay as you go consumption model with Azure Stack Hub. And if you want to leverage more of a true virtualization capability while tying into Azure-based services, moving to the right on Azure Stack HCI and starting with a lower node account of 2 nodes and then paying upfront for that server hardware and licensing and having that unrestricted admin access. The point to mention there is there are some restrictions for Azure Stack Hub on how you manage it and what administrative control you have over that hardware and capability versus a unmanaged solution where you have more flexibility to manage that like a true hypervisor you would inside your own environment. The comprehensive hybrid cloud strategy and solutions that make up this offering is really built around the podium of apps, data, network, identity, and security management. Leveraging the specific Azure public services, as well as the different services that require authentication, identity, and automation, as well as bringing that into your corporate network and moving towards the security and management side of how you would balance these solutions, both on-premise, hybrid, and in the cloud. Azure Stack Hub, as an entry point, is truly a complete autonomous cloud. So to give you an example, there's cruise liners out there in the cruise ship industries that have and run Azure Stack inside their ships, disconnected from the outside. So they can take advantage of DevOps strategy, infrastructure as code, and take all the advantages of what a disconnected true cloud would look like autonomously, as well as leveraging the capabilities for other workloads like application modernization, edge and disconnected computing as the other Azure services that are available to the marketplace. Most customers are connecting their Azure Stack Hub environments to the cloud and then leveraging the capabilities of single portal management and continuous increase in development of their processes through CI/CD, as well as DevOps practices across your on-premise as well as your public cloud environments. This is a truly integrated system that's leveraged between a plethora of different hardware partners. I'll cover that a little bit in a later slide, but Azure Stack Hub is truly that enterprise type of environment and solution that balances a hybrid strategy for your Azure compute, public and private. On the HCI side, it's really built off of Microsoft Hyper-V, which is based off of a Server 2019 kernel OS, and then driving into the ability to leverage the power of hypervisor as well as on-premise virtualization strategy and tying that environment to the public cloud for specific workloads and services that mean the most to those environments. This is great for remote branch as well as high performance workloads. These are validated hardware architectures that are given from, again, a plethora of different hardware partners and OEM partners. And it truly is an SDN and SDI software defined infrastructure. Typically how you would manage your environments with VMware or Citrix Zen server or the different hypervisor strategies. Again, Hyper-V is that lower cost capability in tying those solutions together. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the Azure Stack Hub environment. I'll hope to correlate the difference between Azure Stack Hub and Azure Stack HCI, and then tie in at the end some more Azure Stack Edge appliances for specific use cases. Digging into the Azure Stack Hub side, on the left, it's truly an integrated system that's a turnkey solution dropped inside of your data center and offered by partners like HPE, Dell, Cisco, Lenovo, Fujitsu, and Avnet. So this is really seen as both a integrated system tied into your Azure update strategies and managed from a Microsoft update from your partner automation that they add to it. They're typically pretty fast to deploy in terms of balancing the right pre-sales and solutioning strategies with getting the right solution in place for your specific workload types to deliver up to hundreds of VMs and initially and grow over time to multiple stack environments being leveraged in multiple different regions. There are different ways you can pay for your Azure Stack consumption. You can pay as you use or pay up front, but it's really truly an extension of your Azure model as you receive a single bill from either your Microsoft enterprise agreements or your CSP strategies that you bake into your specific consumption goals. Most importantly, this is an integrated and managed environment. So typically customers are leveraging their integrated system partners like HPE, Dell, or Lenovo to balance into signing up for a managed infrastructure agreement from those OEM partners. They know their products the best and have built a lot of automation to be able to patch, update that continuous cycle of both Azure updates and hardware updates, and automating that for the hardware that they know best. So typically, if you're buying HPE as part of an Azure Stack Hub offering, most customers are leveraging HPE to then manage that environment for a fully managed solution. There's a lot of administrative blockers that you would typically have with a virtualization buy that you would have on your data center, but typically there's a little bit of less control you have over these Azure Stack Hub environments that you want to pay attention to. Taking a look at the different topologies and scale sets, most of these hardware environments are starting at a minimum of 4 nodes. This gives you instant resiliency of the environment. If you were to have a specific disk failure, a subsystem disk failure, as well as a node failure, you can tolerate those large hits against the environment as you balance and maintaining the workload up to a specific 3 nines and 4 nines capability, even 5 nines capability on your on-premise environment. It is purpose-built and integrated, and it really layers into balancing and understanding the workloads that you want to put on it to size the right environment that you would have to procure. Again, this is highly secure from an on-premise side. Some workloads that customers look at doing, whether it's database, proprietary code, or some specific data that you don't want to take to the public cloud, customers are choosing to maintain the control of this environment inside of their on-premise environments for that as well as baking in different monitoring diagnostic capabilities for the true Azure Stack Hub. As you can kind of see, taking a look at how some of these environments scale, I take a kind of an example from our HPE partners, starting out with 4 nodes on a DL380, all the way up to 16 nodes. You can have a mix of both hybrid disk or all flash disk. You can balance the different processor types because what you don't want to do in these environments is overpay for the hardware and be capped at the number of VMs that you take to the environment. So as you build out this and strategize from a cost perspective, the hardware that you want to build for those workloads, you also want to size the right CPU, disk, and memory tier so you're not overpaying for hardware that you might not ever use inside of your stack environment. So as you can see, different processor tiers on the lower left, some examples, working all the way up from a gold 6126 processor with 12 cores and having the availability for those 16 cores running as high as the 8180s for 28 cores. Again, if you have workloads that aren't CPU heavy, you wouldn't want to build into a higher level platinum-based proc as you start balancing in some of those workloads. On the right, you can see each specific architecture, which is called a stack region, is balanced between an integrated system around both a switch architecture, a management server that manages the updates of those nodes, and the automation that the hardware vendors put in to keep that hardware, chipsets, firmware, as well as Azure code up to date in a continuous cycle. What Azure Stack Hub is and what it isn't. What it is a consistent hybrid cloud platform. It's an integrated system that you can put IaaS and both PaaS workloads onto it, as well as being regularly updated from an Azure consistency perspective. There will be a very good balance that customers have to understand on how quickly those updates come to you and how those are managed with your managed service agreement to maintain compliance on how quickly Azure moves. What it isn't is a virtualization replacement play. If you think you have 16 nodes of a VMware ESX or on-premise Hyper-V environment and Azure Stack is an option for that workload, that typically isn't the way that you're building out these Azure Stack Hub environments. It isn't a do-it-yourself infrastructure. You're not piecemealing this yourself and hoping to put Azure related code on it. This is truly being delivered as a whole solution by the hardware vendor and managed from the hardware vendor. And it's definitely not a static system that you deploy and forget. It's something that is very highly managed and somewhat high touch to keep it valuable to you for your overall DevOps approaches using Microsoft Azure. Some recent announcements for Azure Stack Hub is, as well as from a partner perspective, but a service perspective. So cognitive services as well as Kubernetes on Azure Stack, kind of looking down towards the middle, as well as WVD as a potential in a private preview to do virtualization desktop strategies on your Azure Stack environments. Some of this is not released yet, but from a large perspective is a lot of the workloads that customers are looking to bring onto their Stack environments, as well as some GPU capabilities and NVIDIA support for some feature enhancement. As well as some of the partner solutions like NetApp for NetApp file services, as well as some foundational patterns like different networking and load balancing capabilities are how you're elevating your Azure Stack Hub environment to meet the enterprise needs of your virtualization strategy. Some quick notes on Azure Stack Hub patching and updating. So again, these are pre-validated updates both from the hardware vendor and from Microsoft Azure. As these get pushed down to your environment, they are built out as a rolling upgrade process across the nodes inside that specific stack. So if you had 16 nodes inside the stack, you would anticipate that throughout the month and quarter, Microsoft Azure would be pushing updates, but those would be managed by the hardware platform and how it's automated. So you could expect a multiple switch update per year being balanced against the hardware firm dates that are being automated, as well as laying on the correct and updated Microsoft Azure platform service, all being handled within the specific management appliances of the Azure Stack, some of them virtual, some of them physical, as well as the balancing of those updates across the entire hardware platform in a very unified way. These are very frequent, they happen often, and what that does is it creates some caps in the environment of how many VMs or how much processor memory is consumed. So if you're hoping to over allocate either memory or processor in your Azure Stack environment, you might want to think again. So there are some limitations on how aggressively you can use those reserves and capacities, but for the most part, it's built from always guaranteeing uptime through the update cycles, so keeping fault tolerance and highly resilient environments in place as these updates are being automated. They are also automated from an application perspective across the entire infrastructure, all the way from the switch down into the hardware, chipsets, firmware, and everything you would expect from that. Some remaining hub services today and tomorrow, as you can see in development, there's a lot of cognitive services, IoT Hub, Edge Manager, as well as blockchain being investigated for Azure Stack Hub. A lot of things that we see from a CORETTE perspective is really leveraging Azure Stack for purpose-built virtual machines, storage platform plays, as well as PaaS services. What we've come to learn is that forklifting your existing SQL environments or database services to a PaaS environment is somewhat tricky. We see a lot of customers building cloud-native applications with PaaS services on Stack and really building out their forward-thinking strategies using Azure Stack Hub to displace what they're doing traditionally inside of their current enterprise. One thing to mention, there is a migration effort that has to go from your on-premise environment to your Microsoft Azure Stack Hub. You need third-party partner migration tools to be able to do that with. Some success that we've seen both from Veeam and Commvault, as well as some of the other partners listed here. There is service engagement and time and effort it takes to take a VM or data from your on-premise environment to Stack. There's different ways you connect your Stack environment, but these third-party tools have been proven invaluable as you plan to migrate that effort. So how do you buy Microsoft Azure Stack Hub? So again, looking at the different system procurement and managed services that you would typically lay out, it's sold as a complete integrated system, pre-installed and validated from a hardware vendor, as well as a control plane that you can manage with and a managed services engagement that you would manage by. Some of the Azure Stack Hub usage models is that you can pre-buy from a capacity perspective or consume as you go. So one thing to remember, because you're buying the hardware, the memory, the compute, the disk, everything to run that virtual workload, you do still pay consumption at other amounts as it comes into Stack. So you do still continue to get that subscription billing from an EA or CSP on that consumption model. If you want to do a fixed fee capacity buy, that's only locked in from your EA strategy, as well as being more fixed fee annual subscription basis. Some quick proof of concept guides, as you can see from Azure Stack Development Kit versus the integrated system side. There's some do's and don'ts around what you can do with the ASDK and what you do from an integrated system perspective. There are some limitations around how you would interface with your DIY Azure Stack Development Kit and what you would lay into your full Azure Stack Hub environment. There's some limitations around Active Directory, as well as some external apps and access, patch process, performance and scalability, redundancy testing. So something to keep in mind as you might be evaluating with the SDK versus how customers from the enterprise are really building integrated systems. Jumping real quick into Azure Stack HCI. So this truly kind of moves away from that fully managed solution and migrates more towards a customer managed hardware solution where you have more administrative control and can balance the Azure services that you bring into the environment. So again, these are procured from hardware OEM vendors like listed below. I highlighted Hewlett-Packard, Dell, and Lenovo as the ones that we typically transact the most business with from a partner perspective. Feel like they have the best entry points into the market, as well as the best automation that comprises that entire Azure Stack HCI solution. As we look through what consists Azure Stack HCI, it truly is built upon the foundation of Windows Server 2019 Data Center Edition, but it ties into a platform called Windows Admin Center. This Admin Center is a installable executable that you install and manage your HCI environments from, but you also tap that environment into Microsoft Azure to consume some other relevant services for backup and control, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So some of the reasons why HCI is chosen, right? So managing and refreshing aging hardware to modernize while bringing Azure capabilities, consolidating your existing server infrastructure to reduce costs and improve performance, and connect these environments to a very agile cloud like Microsoft Azure by enabling a true hybrid approach and leveraging the Microsoft Azure services that are most relevant for those workloads. This is truly a hybrid solution that is, again, built out by the customer or with partners like CORETTE to bring in these solutions and make them valuable to you as a customer and for your projects. And it's truly software defined and validated from an x86 architecture from all the hardware platforms that we talked about previously. The three major services that are tied into your Azure Stack HCI environments are Azure Backup, Azure Security Center, and Site Recovery. Those typically are the lowest hanging fruits for HCI strategy in terms of how do I take my on-premise workload environments and then balance them against a backup or site recovery strategy while increasing security around Security Center. Typically, those are the three services that most customers are interested in for their virtualization on-premise workloads, and ones that are most easily tied in using Admin Center. You can download Admin Center both from Microsoft, but also from the partner pages of the HCI stacks that you buy from. And then as you kind of build out your Admin Center and connect your clusters together, underlying it uses Microsoft Storage Spaces Direct to create that true HCI hyperconvergence type of environment. So not only are you building up a minimum of 3 nodes and maintaining some resiliency, through Admin Center, you can see how you're consuming those on-premise resources like Azure Stack HCI, and when you might need to add additional nodes to increase the scale of that environment. Some of the software-defined aspects of Azure Stack HCI, obviously fault tolerant, leveraging software RAID, as well as being able to do encryption for data at rest and data in transit. These are some of the key things that customers have, depended on and rely upon a platform that they bring inside of their environment, and really elevating from a Microsoft Hyper-V perspective how you tie those different hypervisor strategies in together to create an HCI strategy. Scaling up to petabytes in size, as well as from 2 to 16 nodes and from 8 to 400 drives inside that HCI environment. So you can get some pretty big scale built out and totally managed by you, the customer, as well as a good management infrastructure to be able to understand how those platforms are being consumed and when to add to them, meeting those maximums. Lastly, the difference between Azure Stack Hub and Azure Stack HCI is a third offering called Azure Stack Edge. So Azure Stack Edge is really a truly edge appliance. Think of it as a robo type of appliance or even an enterprise appliance used to balance and intake data to the cloud. So balancing different camera-based data or graphics-based data to do machine learning or artificial intelligence, leveraging Azure Stack Edge for GPU capability to do some of those AI and ML workloads, as well as leveraging it to run small pockets of VMs and containers, both from a data center perspective, but also out in the field. So I'll get into that in a little bit. From an Azure Stack Edge perspective, these are pre-packaged bundled appliances that you would procure through the Azure portal. You would leverage those Azure Stack Edge appliances in a single U form factor rack environment to a backpack-enabled appliance that you're taking out and connected via 5G or some different service. Again, tying that back into bringing the workload closest to the data. A lot of this is used for IoT and data consumption up into Azure, as well as an Azure managed appliance being able to balance that workload through the portal. Some use cases for Azure Stack Edge use cases, use cases for Azure Stack Edge is truly Azure Machine Learning, Edge Computing, and Cloud Storage Gateway, as well as some announcements for ruggedized Azure Stack Edge that can take out into the field to bring that capability to the areas that are most hard to reach. So some of these rugged series for battery-powered form factors and carry in the backpack sizes have a lot of use inside of, think about disaster zones or rescue operations where data is key, especially around hospitals and field operations that a lot of customers are starting to leverage these edge appliances for. So something to definitely be cognizant of on the different use cases with that. Also, what's been announced is the NVIDIA GPU capability of Azure Stack Edge, truly giving you some high performance capabilities around managing and modeling that data for your specific cloud needs. Here's a quick diagram of how Azure Stack Edge fits into the sensor IoT space and how it's leveraged for both on-premise systems and into Microsoft Azure Cloud. So using IoT Hub in Azure as well as Azure Storage with block, page, and files, and then modeling that data in the cloud for the true workload workhorse for that data intake into Azure Public to be able to model the data that you need for your specific applications or current needs. Azure Stack is in 92 countries across the world. A lot of that is in the disconnected spaces and HCI spaces, but we're seeing a lot more traction inside of your more Azure Stack Hub in the enterprise spaces. Customers that are truly trying to balance a DevOps approach, both public into private, and creating automation around ServiceNow and a lot of the other applications that you would intake for self-service and things like that. I'll leave you with some Azure Stack Hub key insights. So as we look at the key features for Azure Stack Hub, so leveraging Azure VMs for Windows and Linux, Azure Web Apps and Functions, Azure Key Vaults, Azure Resource Management and Marketplace, moving into containers and AKS, Azure IoT Hub and Event Hubs, and admin tools as well. Integrated delivery experiences, as well as a consistent tools and portal experience that you would have between your on-premise and public cloud, as well as being a fully managed solution by the OEM vendor for field replacement, support, and deployment and configuration and provisioning. Azure Stack HCI key insights are validated HCI infrastructures with Hyper-V and storage spaces direct, built upon the foundation of Windows Server 2019, and leveraging Windows Admin Center for management, as well as growth strategies, and connecting to the most critical Azure services like Azure Backup Recovery, monitoring, as well as Azure Site Recovery. A quick caption about CORETTE. We do these CORETTE webinars every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. We are a Azure Expert MSP, as well as founded and located and headquartered in Farmington, Michigan. We have over 100 employees and really dedicated to the Azure space. We also have other partners inside of our ecosystem like Citrix and Microsoft and VMware, and do a lot of system integration leveraging both Microsoft and all of our solution partners in that space. The offer I'd like to also wrap up with today is we'd love to talk to you about your specific needs for Azure Stack and the different things that you leverage across your organization. We can provide free cost estimates evaluating your on-premise environment and how some of that workload would move to the cloud or onto Azure Stack, as well as free SA planning sessions and Azure credits up to 15,000. We are also a very tightly integrated Microsoft partner that has access to a lot of funding programs like Cloud Economic Assessments and Azure Foundations, and would love to bring those offers to you as a customer for Microsoft paid engagements on those approaches. I also like to take the opportunity that we just won Microsoft Partner of the Year for 2020 in advisory services and energy industry, and would love to talk to you more. Drop us a line at inquiry@coretech.com or reach out to us on our website, www.coretech.com. John?
Thank you very much, Brian. That was a great presentation, and we had a lot of great information on how Azure Stack is presenting itself with a portfolio of services made up of public and private solutions. We did have a couple of chat line questions that came in, and I'd like to ask you one of them. And that was, what industries is CORETTE seeing success for Azure Stack services?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for that. Quite honestly, I think we're seeing a ton of momentum inside of large enterprises for Azure Stack Hub. One of the industries we've seen some traction is in energy, and truly trying to use that on-premise environment for the applications that they built and moving into a true public cloud infrastructure. Energy and retail would be the two industries that we see the most energy momentum in.
That's great. So we do have another one here, is how does a company get engaged to understand the true cost of the stack?
No, that's a great question. So, a lot of time is spent in evaluating the workloads that exist within your environment and balancing how those workloads can either migrate to the public cloud like Microsoft Azure or stay on premise. And Azure Stack Hub and HCI gives us the availability to place the workload where it needs to be placed the most. And that planning session and those estimations are really done from an engagement perspective. A lot of times, as I mentioned, that could be funded by Microsoft. It could be self-funded for your organization. If there is, Microsoft funding that or relationships that don't exist, we'd love to introduce you to those. But really trying to build upon the cloud economic assessments, like what's called CEAs, to investigate what workloads exist on premise and the cost of that being either laid inside of Azure Public Cloud or leveraged from an Azure Stack Hub or HCI appliance perspective on how we do that. So yeah, would love to talk to you more about that from a customer side. Reach out, inquiry@coretette.com, and we'd love to get engaged with you there.
Thank you very much, Brian. I don't see any other new questions coming in on the chat line. And if that is all we have for the questions, I want to thank everybody for joining us for our Azure Stack webinar, and remind you that every Tuesday at 2 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, we have a new topic, and look forward to our next topic next week at this time. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Is that it? Did I do it right?
That should be right.